Imagine a pirate fleet. What do you see? The Black Pearl. A couple of dozen desperate cutthroats on a handful of ships, forget that. Now, imagine an armada of 1,800 vessels and an army of 80,000 men. That is larger than the entire navies of most countries at the time. And at the head of this crushing force stood no crowned royal and no decorated admiral. It was a woman who began her journey in the cramped cabin of a floating brothel. In the early 19th century, the South China Sea became a living hell for merchants and a nightmare for the emperor of the Qing dynasty. There was no law here, except for one, the Iron Code of Madame Cheng. She didn't just plunder ships. She captured coastal cities, taxed entire provinces, and executed anyone who dared to break her discipline. Against her, they sent the finest forces of the empire, the British Royal Navy and Portuguese squadrons. But instead of fleeing, she made them sink. She did what no other pirate in history ever managed. She didn't just survive, she defeated the system. She forced the mighty emperor of China into a corner, leaving him with a choice: continue a hopeless war and risk his throne, or beg for peace from a former courtesan on her terms. How did an ordinary woman from the lowest depths of society build the most efficient criminal corporation in history? Why was she feared more than storms or tsunamis? And what incredible finale awaited the pirate queen whom they could never catch? In 1807, when a powerful storm took the life of her husband, the fearsome pirate Admiral Zheng Yi, everyone expected his vast empire to fall apart. But his widow had other plans. She didn't just hold on to power, she forced every captain to swear loyalty to her through cunning, diplomacy, and cold calculation. To command an army of tens of thousands of cutthroats who respected no one, she had to create something more than just rules. She created the Iron Code. These weren't the pirate codes from Hollywood movies that were meant to be broken. This was the law of blood. If a pirate stole from the communal treasury, death awaited him. If he left his post without permission, his ears were cut off. But the strictest rule of all concerned the treatment of women. For the rape of a female captive, a pirate was executed on the spot. Madame Cheng understood that to defeat an empire, her people had to be more than just bandits, they had to be a disciplined machine. And that machine worked. Her red flag fleet became the de facto master of the coast. She seized control of the salt trade and taxed every vessel that passed by. Those who refused to pay simply vanished into the depths of the sea. Emperor Jia of China was furious. He sent a massive fleet to destroy the pirate upstart, but Madame Cheng turned the naval hunt into a humiliating farce. She lured the imperial ships into traps, used fireship suicide vessels packed with gunpowder, and captured enemy ships one by one. The emperor's admirals, crushed by the shame of their defeat, chose suicide rather than face their ruler. When the government realized they couldn't handle her on their own, they turned to the Western Devils, British and Portuguese squadrons with their heavy cannons and modern ships. It seemed that against such combined might, the pirates stood no chance. But Madame Cheng was preparing for her greatest battle, one that would change the history of naval warfare forever. In 1809, the South China Sea became a boiling cauldron. The combined fleets of China, Portugal, and Britain pinned Madame Cheng down in Lantau Bay. For 9 days, a continuous cannonade roared. Against the pirates stood the latest European ships of the line, whose massive guns were designed to turn wooden junks into splinters. It seemed like the end. Any other pirate in history from Blackbeard to Henry Morgan would have either died in a blaze of glory or ended their life on the gallows. But Madame Cheng was more than just a pirate. She was a grandmother of human weaknesses. As the cannons thundered, she realized something. The empire was exhausted. The war was draining the treasury, and trade had ground to a halt. Instead of launching a suicidal final charge, the pirate queen did something unprecedented. She left her fleet and, accompanied only by a few unarmed women, walked straight into the governor-general's residence in Canton. It was the boldest bluff in history. She entered the enemy's palace without a sword, but from a position of absolute strength. Her terms were brief and shocking. Total amnesty for herself and all 80,000 of her subordinates, the right to keep all her plundered wealth, and the permission to keep several ships for the salt trade. And the emperor, his pride crushed, agreed. She became the only great pirate in history to voluntarily retire, keeping not just her head, but millions in gold. Madame Cheng opened a gambling house in Guangzhou and successfully managed her trade interests for the rest of her days. She died at the age of 69 in her own bed, surrounded by children and grandchildren, as one of the wealthiest and most respected women in the region. The story of Madame Cheng is not just a tale of looting. It is proof that a true leader is not the one who shouts the loudest or strikes the hardest. It is the one who creates the rules that even kings are forced to play by. She rose from poverty, conquered the ocean, and left behind a legend that every fleet in the world could not sink.